Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Happy Monday, everybody. I hope your day and your week are going very well so far. Got a new day, which of course means a new NBA player prop video to share with you guys. But first, as always, people, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. It helps the channel grow, and it really does mean a ton to us. With a new day and a new week comes some new opportunities to go ahead and make some money. I've got 4 NBA player props to go ahead and share with you guys in today's NBA slate. But first, before we dive into today's picks, a quick little recap of how we did last week. And this is going to become the new weekly tradition here on the show. On Mondays, we're going to go ahead and recap how we did in the week prior to go ahead and just take a look at how our weeks fared. You can find this over on GuyBostonSports.com and check it out for yourself. All my daily picks are posted here as well. So you can go ahead and look at each day-by-day record or the weekly recaps. Everything is posted here on the website. And there's no sugarcoating it, guys. If you watched last week's videos, we had a pretty rough week across the board. Overall, we went 7-12 last week in our single bet category, minus 5.08 units. Look, I believe that in this industry, you have to be transparent with your viewers because it's the only way to be honest with yourself and with others is just to be transparent about how you're doing. We had a shitty week last week. We lost a lot of units across the board. There's really no positives to spin. The only positive that I can take away is the fact that the week is over. And we did actually have a nice finish. We did have a slightly profitable day on Saturday, went 2-1 plus 0.91 units. So at least we closed the week off on a decent note. But overall, it was a bad week. There's no sugarcoating it. There's no way I can go ahead and make light of what was an ultimately bad week. Even the parlays, 0-3 minus 2 units. Across the board, we lost 7 units across both categories last week. By far, our worst week of this season. Honestly, it might be, I'll have to go back to last year's records. It might be the worst week of NBA picks I've ever had here on the channel. It's that bad. So it was a really bad week. And you know what? The only positive I can take away, honestly, is that the night is darkest before the dawn. Shout out The Dark Knight. Shout out Batman. We had a really bad cold streak, but usually what follows a really bad cold streak is a really solid hot streak. So if anything, that bad last week just means that we're due for a nice bounce back this week. Overall, despite having an abysmal week last week, we are still profitable on the year. Now, in the single bet category, we're 94 and 85 on the season. We are down 1.22 units despite being 9 wins over 500. And the parlay record, overall, it's kind of the reverse, right? Not really great on the overall record, 8-21, but we are up over 2.5 units. So across the board, we are still profitable. And that's imagine now we lost 7 units last week and we are still up over 1 unit in profit on the season across both categories. So going into last week, we were up over 8 units on the season. We were having a pretty solid year and we had a really bad week. So it is what it is. I just want to go ahead and share that with you guys. So like I said, I'll be doing that every Monday, just kind of going through the weekly recap. Hopefully next week's weekly recap is a lot better. I've rambled enough here, guys. Let's get right to the picks for NBA player props coming your way right now. Jumping on over to the outlier screen, guys, our first pick in today's NBA slate comes from the Warriors-Raptors game, 7:30 p.m. tip-off. We've got Buddy Hield of the Golden State Warriors over 11.5 points. We are getting this play to us for minus 120 on FanDuel. It's also available on DraftKings for minus 165, but obviously and clearly the better value here is on the FanDuel play at minus 120. Now, the overall data is not fantastic. You see the last 10 game data, just 3 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the over, say 30% hit rate, averaging 8.3 points per game across his last 10 games. And if we go ahead and stretch that data out to the entire 2024-25 season, just a 45% hit rate, 17 out of 38 games he's cashed the over, averaging 12.45 points per game this season. He had a really strong start to the year, and then the middle half of the season, he really fell off. That's kind of the Golden State Warriors in general. They had a really good start to the year, and then they fell off with kind of in congruence with Buddy Hield's falling off. But over the last 5 games or so, due to some injuries and whatnot, he has stepped up and he's starting to cash a little bit more. So if you go ahead and narrow this down to just the last 5 games for Buddy Hield, you see a 60% hit rate. 3 of his last 5 games, he's cashed this over, averaging 13.6 points per game. He has 2 misses in there, but that 1 miss versus Miami, he literally missed it by 1 point. So again, the overall data is not fantastic, but if we narrow it down a little bit, he has been playing a little bit better over the last week or so. So we have that to look at. We also have the head-to-head data here, which a small sample size, yes. Was it last year with a different team? Also, yes. But each of the last 2 times he faced off with the Toronto Raptors, he did cash the over, 100% hit rate, averaging 22 points per game. Now, again, both with the Sixers last year, Very different role from what he's playing right now in Golden State. Very different team. He had 31 points back on November 22nd. Actually, we're going 3 teams back. That was when he was still in Indiana with the Pacers. He had 31 points. And then with Philadelphia, he had 13 points. Now he's in Golden State. So third different team since November 22nd of 2023. I think the key thing to note in those two matchups is the fact that he doesn't need to play a ton or take a ton of shots here to go ahead and cash the over. See, the second time when he cashed it, he had 13 points. It was a narrow cash, but you see he only took 7 shots. He shot 5 for 7, only played about 21 minutes, 22 minutes in that game, and he still went ahead and cashed the over. So we don't need Buddy Hield to go ahead like the first game, play 35 minutes and take 17 shots. Obviously, he crushed this line the last time. If we go ahead and look at the usage data here for him over the last 5 games, his minutes have been steadily increasing. He's averaging 26.4 minutes across his last 5 games, steadily increasing. The last 2, he's played at least 31.4 minutes in each of his last 2 games for Golden State. Now, he's not shooting the ball particularly well, but the volume of shots is also very encouraging. 12 shots versus Miami, 15 shots versus Detroit, and 19 shots versus his former team, the Indiana Pacers. Again, did he shoot very well? Not really, but he did take a lot of shots, which obviously is encouraging when it comes to cashing and over in points. He also took a ton of threes in these games. He did only shoot 3 for 12 from 3 versus the Pacers, but the fact that he's taking that many shots and that many threes is kind of encouraging for this over. Parlay that with the fact that Toronto overall this year, they are 27th in points allowed in the NBA versus shooting guards. They are 20th in the NBA, giving up 28.7 points per game to the shooting guard position this season. Now, Buddy Hield plays a little bit of 2, plays a little bit of 3. Even at the 3, the Raptors are about middle of the road, giving up 20.7 points per game. The key thing here also is obviously the injuries here. No Gary Payton, no Brandon Podziemski, no Jonathan Kuminga. Draymond's game time decision. With all these injuries, it creates more minutes and more opportunities for Buddy Hield. If we go ahead and put a filter here and show games without, we're going to go ahead and do Podziemski, and we'll go ahead and do Payton. We'll do those 2. All right, we'll throw Kuminga in there also. How about we'll throw all 3? So we'll show this year's data when all 3 of those guys are out, and you'll see a 50% hit rate on the over. 2 out of 4 games, averaging 13.5 points per game. Again, you see a couple of those close misses, but the last 2 games without those 3 guys, you're seeing the points have gone up, the opportunities, the minutes, the shots, everything has gone up. He's got a really good matchup here too versus Toronto. Looking over at the dashboard here from Guy Boston Sports at the numbers here, look at Toronto. Defense versus position. They're giving up a ton of threes to every position. They're bottom 3 in the NBA across the board, except for centers. But you look at point guards, shooting guards, small forwards. They're giving up a ton of 3-pointers made to those positions, which obviously is really good when you consider Buddy Hield takes a lot of threes. Look at the left side of the screen here for points from 3 allowed. Toronto is the team on the right side of the screen. Golden State is the team on the left side of the screen. Look at the right side here. Total this year, the Toronto Raptors are 26th in the NBA in terms of 3-pointers allowed. In their last 3 games, they're 28th. Teams are taking a ton of threes on them. Buddy Hield, obviously, we've seen the last couple games. He's taken a ton of threes. Got a really solid spot here. Over 11.5 points. Seems like a good bet to me. We spent a lot of time on that pick, guys. I do apologize for that, but I feel like that was the pick out of these 4 where I had to explain myself the most to get you guys to understand where I'm coming from. The rest of these picks, I probably won't have to spend 5 minutes or 4.5, whatever, how many minutes breaking down the pick. But our second pick in today's slate comes from the Knicks-Pistons game, 7:30 p.m. tip-off. And we're going Mikal Bridges over 21.5 points plus rebounds plus assists, which we're getting for minus 120 odds on DraftKings. It is available on multiple sports books for varying odds. Now, the data actually isn't half bad for this Mikal Bridges prop on the season. You see, 7 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the over. It's a 70% hit rate, averaging 21.7 points plus rebounds plus assists per game. He's on a little bit of a cold streak here. His last 3 games, you see, he really hasn't done much of anything. 3 straight misses or cashes on the under, I should say. And the key thing, he's still playing a lot of minutes, 36, 32, and 37 in those 3 games. What's happening? Well, he just hasn't been shooting the ball well. He's still good versus Toronto. He shot 4 for 18, just 22% from the floor. Versus OKC, 0 for 9. And then it just kind of feels like because he's had a little bit of a rough go of it, he didn't take a ton of shots in that Bucks game, only 5 shot attempts. He did shoot 2 for 5. There was also a blowout in that game as well. The Knicks crushed the Bucks 140 to 106 just last night. Despite that, and despite this being the second night of a back-to-back, I still like Mikal Bridges in this spot. Again, the overall data is really encouraging despite the last 3 games failing to cash the over. So far in 2024, a 68% hit rate on this over for Mikal Bridges. 27 out of 40 games he's cashed the over, averaging 24 points plus rebounds plus assists per game. Again, he was on a really good cover streak here going into this little cold streak he's gotten himself into. Now, from a head-to-head data standpoint, you see 4 of his last 6 meetings with the Detroit Pistons, he has cashed the over. It's a 67% hit rate, averaging 26.67 points plus rebounds plus assists per game against the Detroit Pistons. So some really good numbers there. So far this year, as a member of the New York Knicks, he's played Detroit 2 times, back on November 1st and back on December 7th, and both times he cashed the over in those games. One of them was a blowout too, a 30-point blowout there. He still cashed the over. So some pretty encouraging data. Even when you look at some of the misses, they were pretty narrow misses. Those are, of course, also last year as a member of the Brooklyn Nets. But I think we have ourselves a pretty good spot here for Mikal Bridges. Even looking at the head-to-head data here, now Detroit not a bad team this year by any measure. 16th in points allowed overall, about middle of the road, but rebounds and assists-wise, they've been pretty good. Now, versus small forwards, which is where Mikal Bridges spends a lot of his minutes played, they are 10th in points allowed, only giving up 20.2 points per game to the small forwards, but they are 24th in rebounds and 23rd in assists. So it feels like Mikal Bridges has a pretty decent matchup spot here. And the injuries for the Knicks, there aren't a ton. Obviously, we know Mitchell Robinson's still out. We know Kevin McCullough's still out. Jalen Brunson's a game time decision, which on the second night of a back-to-back, we'll see how that goes. If he misses, I think that could honestly mean an even better spot for Mikal Bridges because of the fact that there'll be some more shot opportunities, some more chances for him to go ahead and get some touches on the basketball. And when last point on this prop, guys, we also have the insights provided by Outlier. Shout out Outlier. Mikal Bridges has exceeded 21.5 points, rebounds, assists in 15 of his last 19 games at home, averaging 25.74 points plus rebounds plus assists per game over his last 19 home games. It's a 79% hit rate. And again, you have seen on this recent homestand for the Knicks, it hasn't gone very great for them. But before this, he was cashing this pretty consistently all season long. So he's been having a really good year in Madison Square Garden, just on a little bit of a cold streak here. I think this is a good matchup and a good spot for him to go ahead and break that cold streak. So like Mikal Bridges here, over 21.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. Guys, we got 2 picks left in today's video. If you are still watching at this point, please go ahead and drop a comment down below. Let's go 11 because we just passed the 11-minute mark. I know we technically are probably closer to 12, so maybe 12 would have been the better pick, but comment 11 down below. As always, guys, we appreciate those who watch all the way through, put a lot of hard work. Even when we win or lose, regardless of the results, we put a lot of work into each and every video. So those who do watch all the way through, we appreciate you guys. Again, I apologize. Sometimes we ramble. Sometimes we go a little bit more in depth on these picks. But if I go longer on a pick, it's because I want to go ahead and convince you guys, because I know Buddy Hield, at first glance, a lot of you guys would probably shut the video off or fast forward, but I'm telling you guys, there are some great data points for these props. So sometimes I will go deeper and deeper into the data if I feel it's necessary. But yeah, the Buddy Hield prop went a little long. But again, appreciate you guys watching all the way through. Let's go ahead and finish off strong here with our final 2 picks. Next up, our next pick, our third prop in today's slate, is coming from Grizzlies Rockets 8 p.m. tip-off. We're going Şengün of the Houston Rockets under 37.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. We're getting this one for minus 115 odds on FanDuel. Again, like most of these props, they are available on multiple sports books for varying odds. You have to always shop around for the best sportsbook odds available. We got some pretty good data on this one, although the last couple games he has gone off for the Rockets. A 60% hit rate over his last 10 games on this under, 6 out of 10 games, averaging 35.6 points plus rebounds plus assists per game over his last 10 games. So far in 2024, a 57% hit rate on this under. 21 out of 37 games, he's cashed it, averaging 34.86 points plus rebounds plus assists per game this season. So you do see some red scattered throughout there, but for the most part, he's been pretty consistent in cashing this under this year. And if we go ahead and look at the head-to-head data, you see an 83% hit rate against the Memphis Grizzlies. 5 of his last 6 meetings with the Grizzlies, he cashed the under, averaging 29.83 points plus rebounds plus assists per game against them over the last 6 meetings. Now, he's played Memphis 2 times this year. The first time back on October 25th, beginning of the year, he had 16 points, 15 rebounds, and 2 assists. He did cash the under, but it was kind of a little bit of a sweat, a little narrow. And then just a couple of days ago, these 2 teams played, and he went off against Memphis. He had 32 points, 14 rebounds, and 5 assists. A massive performance, by far his best career game against this Grizzlies team. And some of you, probably a lot of you, I think it's bold to go ahead and fade a guy who just had that big of a performance against this team. But if you look at the data before that, he never scored more than 20 points in any of these previous 5 meetings. That's all 4 meetings last year and their earlier meeting this year. So although their meeting on January 9th just a couple days ago was very impressive, I do think it's a bit of a shout out outlier. It's a bit of an outlier there. He's never done that anywhere close to that. His next highest scoring performance back on February 14th, Valentine's Day of last year, he had 19 points against the Grizzlies. He had never scored 20 or more against this Grizzlies team, and it makes a ton of sense. Memphis overall, they're a decent defensive team, but versus centers down low, they have been solid all year long. Top 10 in every category. Points allowed, rebounds allowed, and assists allowed. And Şengün doesn't take a ton of threes, let's be honest. If we look at the data here, for both of these teams, points in the paint. Memphis, a pretty solid team defensively in terms of points in the paint. Look at the left side of the screen here, point paints. Overall this year, they're the second best defense in the NBA in terms of points in the paint. And also in the last 3 games, they are top 2. Across the board, Memphis, pretty solid defensively versus centers. Now, the last 7 game data here, you see they've actually trailed a little bit, I guess. But overall, this is a Grizzlies team with the reigning defensive player of the year and Jaren Jackson Jr. on their side. They've got Zach Edey also defending the paint down low. And look in the middle of the screen here, the field goal percentage by shooting zone over the last 10 games. Memphis defensively, they've been pretty solid in the paint around the key here. Around the free throw line, 38.8% opposing teams are shooting. So they're playing pretty well defensively in the paint. And then in the restricted area down below, 66.3, which is it's in the orange zone. It's it's not great. Overall, my point being, this Grizzlies team is really solid defensively, specifically down low versus bigs. And the data previous to their last game kind of reiterates that. Şengün had never scored more than 20 points. He goes ahead and has 32 points, 14 rebounds, and 5 assists. It just seems like everything kind of struck for him in that spot. He took a lot of shots, 20 shot attempts, shot 60% from the floor. Maybe I'm completely off here and he embarrasses me in this spot. I just would be shocked to see him do it again 2 nights in a row. Again, he's cashing this pretty consistently, the under across the board. So I just have a lot of data to me that points the direction of the under. And my 4th and final pick in today's slate, guys, comes from the Spurs-Lakers game, 10:30 p.m. tip-off. By the way, prayers and thoughts and everything going out to all those in California battling all the fires and whatnot. It has been a disaster. I mean, we can never understand. People who obviously, I'm on the East Coast, we can never understand what that's like. In my area, we don't even have, knock on wood, earthquakes, tornadoes, stuff like that. It's very uncommon in this area, but in California, obviously we know they have fires and whatnot, but this is by far one of the worst ever natural disasters in U.S. history. It's awful seeing, all the people between rich, poor, across the board. Everybody's been devastated by these fires. I would love to, if anybody has some GoFundMe links, maybe we can go ahead and shout those out on a video and get some help to those who need it. It's been an awful thing, and there's, unfortunately, I don't know where it's going to end up, how it's going to be stopped. There's rumors of really strong winds coming in too, which could only hurt the situation. So prayers going out to all those in Los Angeles. I hope things do get better. Los Angeles, California, all those areas affected by the fires. I hope those who need help are helped. But getting back to the picks here, we're going Victor Wembanyama of the Spurs over 35.5 points plus rebounds. We're getting this for -115 on DraftKings. It is available on a lot of other sports books for varying odds, like normal. But we're going to take it on DraftKings for -115. I don't have Caesars available in my area, so I can't obviously ride with that pick. The data looks pretty solid on this one. 7 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the over. A 70% hit rate, averaging 38.9 points plus rebounds per game over the last 10 games. If you go and stretch the data out overall to 2024, not bad. 50% hit rate, 16 out of 32 games. He had a little bit of a slow start to the year, but over the last 15, 20 games, he has started turning around. Even the last 20 games, you see 55%, 11 out of 20, with a couple of very narrow, close misses on this line. So overall, the data seems to be okay in this spot. The head-to-head data is decent. You see 3 of his last 5 meetings with the Lakers, he's cashed the over, a 60% hit rate, averaging 36 points plus rebounds per game against the Lakers over the last 5 meetings. They played 2 times this year so far, on November 15th and on November 27th. On the first matchup on November 15th, he had 28 points and 14 rebounds. The second matchup on November 27th, he had 20 points and 10 rebounds. He did miss that one, obviously. But look at the numbers down below, the usage and whatnot. Now, rebound chances, he didn't have a ton the last time they played, only 11 rebound chances. He did have 10 rebounds, though, so he capitalizes. For being 7'5", I'd hope you could capitalize on those rebound opportunities. A decent amount of chances there. He's playing, obviously, a good amount of minutes, which is obviously key. The thing that obviously to note is the fact that he took a lot of shots in these last 2 meetings. 25 shots on November 15th, 20 shots on November 27th. He just didn't shoot the ball very well. 9 for 20, 45% overall. He shoots the ball a little bit better, and, you know, we're talking about a cash versus a miss. Looking at his last 10 games, and obviously he hasn't played since January 8th, so he's got a nice little amount of rest coming into this game. He had a really bad performance versus Milwaukee, just 10 points and 10 rebounds in that matchup versus Giannis and the Bucks. So I think a little bit of a bounce back spot is in order for Wemby here. Rebound chances averaging about 20 per game over the last 10, which obviously pretty solid. And he's taking an average of 20 shots per game over his last 10. Obviously, that game versus Milwaukee, he only took 10 shots in that one, so that kind of brings his numbers down. But, you know, he's taking a healthy amount of shots. He's averaging about 12 rebounds per game. The data across the board looks pretty solid. And the Lakers, obviously, versus centers, 19th in points allowed, 28th in rebounds allowed, so good matchup there. And again, referring back to the dashboard over on GuyBostonSports.com, you see defense versus position last 7 games versus centers. The Lakers 17th in points, 20th in rebounds. So again, they're not the best matchup of all time, but it does seem to be a pretty decent matchup here for Wembanyama. And if you look at the corners here, let's go ahead and look at the shooting percentage numbers. Left side of the screen, Lakers defensively. Now in the corners, which is where Wemby does sit a lot, you can see they're pretty good defensively. Only 28.2% allowed 3-point shooting percentage and 30.2. So the corners where Wemby takes a lot of his threes, they're actually pretty good defensively. The key area here is the restricted area. The Lakers are giving up 73.7% field goal shooting in their last 10 games inside the restricted area. So, you know, the Lakers defensively down low, you can't attack them. You can score some points. Wemby has a little bit of a tendency to stay outside and take a lot of threes, which I don't understand. Being as big as he is, you'd hope to see him stay down low a little bit more. And if you look at the Lakers defensively in terms of points in the paints allowed over the last 10, over the last 3 games, 29th, at home 29th, overall 28th. You can score a ton of points in the paints on this Lakers team. I'd love to see Wemby in this spot, go down low, use his size, and dominate down low. I think if he does that, you got a really good chance of a cash here. If he goes out and starts taking a bunch of threes, we could be in a little bit of a rough situation. But I think overall, a little bit of a revenge spot here. The spread's 3.5, so I think the sportsbooks are telling you this is going to be a pretty close affair. And if it's close, it's because Wemby's having a big game. So I like Wembanyama here, over 35.5 points plus rebound. All right, guys, that is it for me today. I know a very long video for just 4 picks. I do apologize for that. Thank you very much for watching. One more time, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. I'll be back tomorrow with another NBA player prop video, but until then, hope you're all winners. Enjoy the start of the week. Let's go ahead and make some money.